Let's call this meeting to order. Our first order of business is invocation. This is when the board observes a moment of silence to reflect on the business at hand. And after that, the observance of that moment of silence, we will be led in the pledge by County Administrator, Mr. Meadows.
Let us pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much.
Our next order of business is to go into work session. Be it resolved, the Board of Supervisors hereby enters into work session for the purpose of discussing the following: Mountain Valley Pipeline. Do I have a motion, please?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Creed? Aye. Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs? Aye. Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Chair Brown?
Aye.
6 ayes.
We are in work session. And I guess our first order of business would be a presentation by our attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The board asked that I do a presentation on a couple issues tonight. One is on a couple broad legal concepts that will have an effect on this board's involvement in the natural gas pipeline with the FERC process. And then the other topic we wanted me to discuss was the FERC process and maybe highlight opportunities for this board to participate in that process. So the two legal concepts that come into play when you're looking at whether the board has any authority to act or take an action, at least for this case, is preemption, because we're talking about a federal process with FERC, and then the other issue is Dillon rule, which is more of a state legal authority process. So under federal law, preemption it's your basic government 101, where under the supremacy clause, in the federalism that our government's been set up for, is that federal government or federal laws take priority over state laws, and then state laws actually take priority over local laws. And so when there's a conflict under the supremacy clause, the federal laws will supersede or preempt state or local rules or laws that govern that same subject. And basically you have there's two different scenarios of where preemption comes into play. The one that's involved with us in this case, it's called field preemption, and that's a scenario where Congress has provided a comprehensive scheme of regulation through statutory enactment where the federal government has gotten involved in regulating a particular issue. A good example of this is the railroad, and another example is the regulating of interstate gas pipelines. And this is done by the Natural Gas Act that was adopted by Congress. Under the Natural Gas Pipeline, under the Natural Gas Act, federal preemption, the biggest area that you're preempted from getting involved in, at least from a regulatory standpoint, is the siting of the pipeline. And just so I want to point out, these are interstate pipelines, not intrastate, meaning FERC's only involved in pipelines that cross state boundaries and transmit gas across state boundaries through state commerce. Under siting, our local zoning and our building permits were exempt or preempted. I mean, the FERC will decide where the pipeline goes. Now, this doesn't mean we won't have involvement. As you know, we can provide comments. We can urge FERC to look at different things, but we, the board, as we would in normal zoning cases, will not be able to vote on whether this thing goes into Montgomery County. The other area that we're preempted from is construction standards and safety standards. Construction standards, safety standards are really controlled by the Department of Transportation. That's at the federal level, not state level. And actually FERC will look to them to provide guidance on the construction standards. And then once the pipeline's built, Department of Transportation will be in charge of making sure it remains in a safe manner. DOT will be inspecting it. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get further along. The other thing that the federal government has preempted us from, us or any state or any locality, is the abandonment of the facility. So they're in charge also of that process. The state of Virginia will be involved in regulating under the Clean Water Act and under the Clean Air Act. Both of these are programs that have been delegated down by the EPA, and the state will be issuing those permits. We can comment on those permits, but we will not be enforcing or issuing those permits. And then the other concept we want to talk about is Dillon Rule. And this board is very familiar with Dillon Rule. And under Virginia is a Dillon Rule state. The other types of states, when interpreting what authority local governments have, is called a home rule state. California is a great example of a home rule state. Under Dillon Rule, states that come under that type of statutory construction, local governments can only regulate those areas that the General Assembly has granted specific legal authority in the code. A great example, this is your zoning authority. If you look under section 15.2 of the code, this board has, or all localities have, specific zoning authority, and that's been specifically granted by the General Assembly. If that was not in the code, you would not be able to zone. I mean, it's plain and simple. And so under Dillon Rule, you can only do what's specifically granted to you. A home rule state is really the opposite. They can do anything, and they can take any action so long as those actions are either specifically prohibited from taking, meaning their state legislature enacted a law saying you can't do this, you can't do that, and then they can't enact local laws that affect that. Or they also, no one can ever enact legislation that violates Constitution, federal Constitution or state Constitution. So Virginia is in a Dillon Rule, so that means Montgomery County as a locality can only do it can only take such actions that are actually outlined in the code. With the pipeline case, there's three areas that really this board would have a regulatory involvement in. One's under erosion sediment control. The federal government has not preempted that. Not FERC, but MVP will have to comply with erosion and sediment control. They will also have to comply with stormwater regulations that Montgomery County regulates. And there's also the noise ordinance. The county has a local noise ordinance, and MVP would have to comply with that in all their actions. Now, just to give you, there's a possibility that we may not get involved in the erosion sediment control or stormwater, because since this pipeline project goes across many jurisdictions in the state of Virginia, there is an option that MVP can take, and they probably will because it'd be easier for them, where they would actually go through the state of Virginia. They would still have to do the same erosion sediment control measures and stormwater measures. However, they'll just have to submit one plan, and that plan would go through the state DEQ. Now, we being the county could still be involved. We would not be, if that's the case, we would not be involved in inspecting or enforcing any violations. However, if there are suspected violations, citizens can contact the county, and then the county would then could work as a liaison with the state, if that's the case. If we do the regulating, then we would do the inspecting and enforcing, but chances are the state would probably do it because, like I said, this pipeline goes through many jurisdictions in Virginia. We would be the ones regulating the noise ordinance, though. Oh, if there's any questions, please interrupt.
Marty, in regards to the noise ordinance,
yeah.
Let's say that they're on a 10-acre tract and we set a decibel level, let's say of 60. They can't exceed 60 decibel levels outside of your property, at the property line. Would that be considered reasonable
The way it
So
works
I'm thinking of the compressor station.
yeah, and that's what the compressor station, that's probably, the construction activity is going to come in and be involved in the noise ordinance, I think, and also the compressor station, the construction of the compressor station and the operation of that. The way it works is they measure from the receptor area, or the what they call the lands that are receiving the noise, and there's different decimal levels for the different types of zoning. So A1, you know, in business you might have higher allowable noise, and A1 you're going to have lower, and so and they're also lower or higher at night and then in the day. So those decibels are already set up in the code, and they can be measured with instruments.
But it's not on their, if they purchase a large tract
It's
of
not on
land.
their land, it's on the receiving land.
So it would be one of their adjoining neighbors.
Right, because the noise ordinance is really like a nuisance ordinance, and that it's the noise that's being sent over to the neighbors that you're trying to mitigate or get rid of. It's not the noise on the site itself. So,
Thank you.
yep. FERC jurisdiction, it comes under the Natural Gas Act, and it comes under Section 7C specifically, which states no company can construct or operate an interstate gas pipeline without first obtaining a certificate of public necessity and convenience for that right. Factors considered when issuing a certificate. These are broad factors, and we'll get into the environmental part a little bit later. But the thing that FERC looks at is the project in the public interest, and is the benefits of the project outweigh the adverse impacts. The adverse impacts are going to be environmental for the most part, and benefits going to be, you know, the policy that the federal government has about getting gas or natural gas and things of that nature. The big area that comes under adverse impacts are environmental, and under the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, FERC is required under that statute to consider project alternatives and wide range of potential environmental impacts, and we'll get into that more specifically. But FERC is required to look at the environmental impacts, and they're also required to let the public know about those impacts and get comments from the public. And like I said, we'll talk about that later. The one thing about FERC is that they're they're not legislative, they're executive. They're part of the executive federal branch. And so their hearings are paper hearings, meaning it's that their board will just review filings made by stakeholders or parties. It could include testimony that people submit, but there's not actually a legislative hearing before, you know, like this board. And so the big thing to keep in mind is that because it's not legislative, they're not really influenced by hundreds of identical letters, or they're not influenced by petitions that simply urge the rejection of the pipeline. What they're interested in is comments specifically about environmental issues, about why the pipeline shouldn't go in certain areas, or avoid certain impacts that we'll talk about more specifically. So they don't want to hear, I just don't want a pipeline. They want to hear why, and give substantial evidence why the pipeline should not be going through that particular area. All FERC is required to do in order to withstand any legal challenge that might come in federal court following the issuance of a certificate is that their decision has to be supported by what's called substantial evidence. And what the courts are going to do is they're going to defer to FERC, meaning the courts are not going to use their they're not going to change FERC's decision because they think a different decision should have been made. They're not going to impose their what they think should be. What they're going to look at is whether FERC's decision is supported by substantial evidence. And so what you're going to find is you're going to find in many instances, especially with the environmental concerns or impacts, you're going to see split opinions between experts. And so when you get situations like that, so long as FERC adequately explains their decision and that expert's testimony is relevant and supported by substantial evidence, then if FERC goes with one expert instead of the other, the court's still going to find that type of decision is supported by substantial evidence, even if the court thought the other opinion was probably a better way to go, because they're just not going to impose their judgment. They're just going to look at whether the law has been met, if that makes sense. Because the way the statute's been set up is for FERC to make these decisions. So the court's going to just make sure that those decisions are supported by substantial evidence and not decisions that they would otherwise make differently, if that makes sense. Under FERC, there's 3 phases of their process. We have the pre-filing phase, which we're in right now. We have the application phase, which we understand may be coming by the end of the year, and the certificate phase. Under the pre-filing phase, the applicant, or in this case MVP, they have to actually request for pre-filing process. And during this process, they start studying potential project sites. They identify stakeholders like the county of Montgomery. They'll identify possible routes. They'll start conducting route studies and field surveys. In fact, I think that's probably what they're working on most at this point. And they also hold open houses for stakeholders. They've already done the identifying stakeholders. They've already held their open houses, at least the initial ones. And I think they're in the middle of doing their route studies and field surveys. What they're trying to do is come to a final application that has one route that they ask for approval on. During this process, the pre-filing FERC's got to actually grant them pre-filing process. If it's a large project like the one we have here, they will grant that. In fact, they did grant it, and they gave it a pre-filing docket number. FERC staff participated in open house. They've done that. The big thing FERC did was they published notice of intent for preparation of EIS. In this case, they're doing environmental impact statement, not environmental assessment because of the size of this project. And so what that notice is basically telling everybody that they're going to start the preparation of the EIS. And also they've opened up what's called a scoping period, they've held scoping meetings where they're looking for public comment on potential environmental issues, alternatives, measures that the public may want to see in this EIS that they're in the process of preparing. And the deadline for this initial open scope period comments is actually tomorrow, June 16th. Okay, once the company figures out what the route's going to be, they'll go ahead and file with the application for the certificate of public convenience. This is actually the formal filing. They have not done this yet. We keep hearing it might happen at the end of the year, but it can't be done until they actually have a route that they want to go with. That application will have a description of the proposed route. It'll have environmental reports. It should have environmental analysis on why other routes weren't picked, or certain routes were picked over other routes. And then the big thing is once this is filed, FERC will then issue a notice of application, a notice that they received an application to construct and operate a new pipeline, and this is filed in the Federal Register. It's the same place that they filed that they were getting ready to prepare their environmental impact statement. Also in this application process, FERC will then start preparing the draft EIS. And once they're in the process of doing that now, then they will provide the draft EIS in the application process. And when that's provided, that also will be, they will seek public comment on the draft EIS. And this is an important opportunity for this board to review that draft EIS and provide comments, or what suggested changes you'd like to see, what things are being left out of that draft EIS. FERC will hold public meetings on the draft EIS. They will also respond to the comments that are submitted on the draft EIS, and then they may revise it, and they may not, and they'll issue the final EIS.
Will they send us a copy of that too?
What they will send is a notice that some draft EIS has been prepared, and then you can obtain that. Yeah. The big thing about once the application is filed and FERC sends out the notices, that triggers the time period of when parties can become interveners, and this is something that this board should consider. What the intervener does is, once the application is filed, you have to file it for intervener status within 21 days of that application, of the notice of application appearing in the Federal Register. What this basically does is become a formal party to the process. The biggest thing it'll do is that'll give you standing to request a rehearing at the end of the process should you not like the decision of FERC. And also, after the rehearing, let's say it still wasn't changed to your liking, it would also give you standing, if the board so choose, to file an appeal in federal court. If you're not an intervener, you cannot file for appeal or ask for a rehearing, so it's important to do that. The other important thing it provides is you receive all applicant filings. You'll get filings from other interveners. However, if you're an intervener and you're filing information, then you do need to provide that to all interveners, and there'll probably be many interveners, I would think. I would assume all the localities will become interveners, and I think a lot of individuals will as well. So what we will ask the board to do, maybe in the next month or two, would be to consider a resolution authorizing staff to file on the board's behalf for intervener status, because you will need to authorize that filing. And like I said, the filing wouldn't occur until we get the notice, which could be the end of the year, but we're not sure.
Is that all paper copies that need to be distributed, or is it just electronic?
I'm sorry?
Paper copies that need to be distributed to all the interveners?
Yes.
Or can it be electronic, cutting down the cost to participants?
It's my understanding that you have to provide comments to all interveners. Now I'm not sure what that entails, but you'll have to provide. Maybe you can provide it electronically. I'm not sure, but we can check on that. All right, the bulk of FERC's review is really environmental, and this is because of the National Environmental Policy Act, and what that requires is they designate FERC as a lead agency, meaning before FERC can entertain or consider granting a certificate, they have to examine the environmental impacts of granting such a certificate. And more importantly, they have to inform the public of that impact, and they have to go out and get the public's input on environmental impacts if such a certificate was granted. And that's called the scoping process. And that's, so they're gathering input from both public and interested agencies. They're required to get information from what's called cooperative agencies, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So what, under NEPA, what FERC's looking for are comments on potential environmental effects, also reasonable alternatives and measures to avoid or lessen those impacts. And they also want to know what environmental issues should be evaluated in the EIS. The EIS includes, there's certain categories that are outlined in what an EIS is supposed to cover. And in fact, when FERC issued their notice that they were getting ready to prepare an EIS, FERC actually identified numerous specific environmental issues that they were going to look at, and those issues come under these, they're examples of, that come under these broad categories. Like the one you see up there, it says geology and soils. FERC's already identified that karsts, sinkholes, and caves are environmental impacts that need to be looked at. Underwater resource and wetlands, FERC's already identified domestic wells, springs, rivers, and creeks are all issues that need to be looked at. Under vegetation and wildlife, obviously the National Forest is involved. And then endangered species, there's a few endangered species that are involved or are in the area of the pipeline. Cultural resources, National Register of Historic Places will be involved in that. Land use, recreation, visual resources, that includes such things as residential areas, that would be a land use impact. Recreation and visual would be Appalachian Trail, Parkway, and other scenic byways. Socioeconomics would be property values, tourism, local infrastructure, things of that nature. Air quality and noise accumulation, they've already identified as an issue, and that's mainly because of the compressor and also construction, especially if construction's going on at near or adjacent to residential areas. Impacts on public safety, emergency response systems, they've already identified something needs to look at, and also public safety. And then obviously alternatives. Alternatives are going to be a big issue on how, because what FERC's required to do is look at all those issues and come up with ways to mitigate, lessen, or avoid those impacts. And the way you're going to do that is alternatives to what the pipeline companies already proposed. In coming up with this information, FERC's going to look at their cooperating agencies. That includes the Department of Agriculture. Forest Service is a big player in this because the National Forest, many miles or many acres is involved in where the pipeline is being proposed or alternatives are being proposed. Army Corps of Engineers will be involved and have to grant permits for any water crossings like the Roanoke River. U.S. Department of Transportation, obviously we already talked about, they're involved in safety and construction standards. EPA is involved, and so is the State Historic Preservation Offices. And then once the draft EIS is prepared, FERC will publish that they had that prepared and they'll seek public comment. And that's important. That's probably the next important time that this board and other stakeholders should get involved and provide comments on that draft. They'll consider the draft. They'll also consider or recommend measures to avoid, minimize, or mitigate. Those are the words, the magic words you hear about with the EIS, on the impacts on the specific resources that I talked about. And then they'll evaluate alternatives to the project and the portion of the project. Okay, those are the specifics we already talked about. All right, post-certificate phase. Well, FERC will then issue an order. They'll either issue an order granting the certificate or denying the certificate. I can't find it in any instance where they've denied a certificate. What the order will most likely have, if they grant the certificate, is that it will have terms and conditions of approval. It'll have a route authorization, and it'll have mitigation measures that FERC will require for construction due to the environment. And so the order is not going to just simply say you can build the pipeline. It's going to say you can build the pipeline on this specific route, however you got to comply with these terms and conditions. A lot of the terms and conditions they're going to have to comply with beforehand, before they start construction. And then once they provide that information, then FERC will grant them the notice to proceed with construction, and then they'll have to show that they're complying with those measures that are supposed to mitigate the environment through construction. Once FERC issues the order, parties that are interveners, they can request FERC for a rehearing decision within 30 days. There's no time period on when FERC has to rehear it, but there is it's a specific time period on when you have to actually apply for that rehearing. And then if that's denied, parties can also file an appeal with federal court. Pipeline projects generally proceed when there's challenges in federal court. The federal court is most likely not going to grant any injunction to stop the construction. That's just not going to probably happen. So once you file in federal court, MVP is going to be proceeding as if they're getting ready to construct or start constructing. MVP would then have to submit outstanding info to satisfy the conditions of the order, and once they meet that, FERC then has to authorize the construction. So once they grant the certificate, that doesn't give them the authority to construct. They got to then comply with certain conditions. Not sure what those will be at this point, but then FERC will issue a notice to proceed with construction. Construction, they'll finalize project design once they get approval, file plans, survey info. They have to file all those. They'll probably be required by the FERC order. The other big thing to do, once the certificate's granted, eminent domain authority is then granted. And so any right-of-way that they haven't finalized, they could then finalize through eminent domain once the certificate's issued. And so they'll be completing right-of-way acquisition, and then once the notice to proceed comes, they will then start constructing the pipeline. They will be required to file weekly status reports for documenting project inspection and certificate compliance. So this is an area that should be monitored. They'll have to do right-of-way restoration while this thing's being constructed. That also should be monitored. And then once the project goes in service, the Department of Transportation Office of Pipeline Safety then takes over. FERC's out. Pipeline safety. FERC's role is subordinate to the Department of Transportation. FERC will typically consult with DOT regarding compliance with standards of construction. That's not their expertise. They'll look to DOT. In fact, FERC will require the applicant to certify to FERC that the design, install, inspect, test, construct, operate, replace, maintain is all in compliance with the Pipeline Safety Act. DOT is responsible for inspecting the construction of the pipeline and to assure compliance with federal regulations under the Pipeline Safety Act. DOT will review operators prepare construction procedures, verify compliance. They'll also have inspectors in the field verify compliance. Also, once it's operational, safety is then regulated, maintained, and enforced by DOT, and then any violations at that point should be reported to the DOT office of pipeline safety. Before that, before it becomes operational, safety concerns should be reported to FERC. But once it goes operational, then DOT takes over. Questions? Just to reiterate, the big areas, the next coming areas where comments are important is when we get the notice. When we get the notice of application, which will have the pipeline route, and it'll also have at least their environmental analysis. Also, at that point, we can become an intervener. And then once the draft EIS comes out, the board should review that and provide comments, and also the final EIS, which you cannot, there's no comment period in the final EIS. And then once the decision's made, the board can then ask for a rehearing, or they could ask, or they could seek if they so choose, seek to file a legal challenge against the FERC order. So.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Creed.
This is just something that I noticed as I was going through that kind of hit me, that I'd like to have some kind of clarity to it. And it's on number 6 as far as the page that you were in when you, but this, you probably won't need to go there. And my question says, what time in the process is the FERC required to support its decision with a substantial evidence?
Yeah, that would come in any challenge filed in federal court.
Okay, so we've missed so many things that they didn't tell us. Make that more
Yeah, see, if someone challenges and says FERC's decision is faulty for the following reasons, blah blah blah, then FERC would then be required to show that their decision is supported by substantial evidence, and then the court will decide whether that's true or not.
Doesn't mean they're going to come and tell us.
Yeah. Right. Mr. Gable.
Yeah, just I wanted to thank Marty for this nice overview of information that we, of course, on the board have heard before, but it's nice to get it kind of all together, and of course to put it out there in the public so everybody knows kind of where we all stand. I just wanted a point of clarification. I think I know the answer to this. Is about the status of the interveners. Am I correct in understanding? I think what you said is that anyone could be an intervener, so that could be an individual or an organization or locality or something like that.
Correct, but you have to show standing, but I think that's pretty easy to show.
Okay, so if you're a property owner,
that's either a property owner or a property owner close by.
Okay.
And I'm not sure what close by means, but I think if you're in the county of where it's going through, you're probably going to be an intervener status.
Okay. Is there any benefit, or have you seen anything in the past with these situations in which it benefits from collective action rather than having many individual interveners, for example?
Well,
like, would it be better, for example, property owners to get together and could they file collectively?
No, unless they're filing under some type of legal entity. I would say probably not.
But a 501c3 or something like that?
Yeah, if it's a legal entity, then they could file as an intervener, and that doesn't mean they can't work together.
No, of course.
And do things of that nature. But I think it's probably that should be done by a legal entity of some sort or an individual.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Because it's part of that legal process.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I just got one.
Okay.
What would serve the purpose if you had to challenge it and you said the courts wouldn't hear it? No way, they would continue their work. So why would you challenge it to start with?
Well, you could win, and then it would have to stop, or they'd have to fix, or I mean, you might challenge and win, but not necessarily stop the pipeline. pipeline, but they may have to do something that's better for the environment, or some type of mitigating thing that you could argue wasn't looked at or addressed. So then they would have to stop. Yeah, the pipeline company's going to take a risk moving forward, but my guess is they're going to just move forward. But you're right, they take that risk.
Follow up on that, but if you're going to challenge it, then you have to hire legal
Correct. Yeah.
help. And these would
You would
be
need a federal
people that were,
litigator to do that.
specially trained.
Correct.
Which would cost a lot of money too.
And you're also going to need, most likely, experts to help. And because the legal fight's going to be probably environmental.
Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Tuck.
Just to follow up on that, and so far none have been denied at this point.
No certificate that's gone all the way forward. Now, companies have withdrawn, saying they ended up not building it for some reason. But I could not find out if FERC actually denied the right to build.
Right.
Now, there was a federal case that came out not too long ago where they held FERC did not look at cumulative impacts the way they should have and sent it back for their further approval. So you can have some wins in federal court, but whether you're going to stop it, most likely not. It'll just change the way it's built.
Any other questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
before we go into public address, I was wondering if I could have a few moments.
Go right ahead.
First and foremost, I would like to say that I have never stated that I'm in favor of this pipeline. I've opposed it. I have looked at a lot of different factors. I have seen no economic benefit to either Montgomery County or any of the surrounding counties for that matter. And if you look on the record, that's exactly what I've said. I continue to believe that it doesn't have any economic benefit to Montgomery County, and I continue to be very concerned about this company. Anyone who sat through the meetings, I don't believe that they've been able to provide us reasonable answers to our, I think, reasonable questions. I feel like that they've been evasive, whether that was intentional on their part or unintentional. The unintentional part leads me to believe that they're uninformed. They've never built a pipeline this long before. As I understand, it's about 30 miles long is the longest pipeline they built, and this pipeline could be over 330 miles. And looking at things, and I know Duncan said that he doesn't get to write the headlines. I wish the headline would have been, Mr. Tuck tries to help as many people as he possibly could. Or perhaps, the pipeline's not going to be going through Giles County. Many of you here, especially maybe from Roanoke County or Craig County, don't know me. I'm an attorney by trade, and a lot of times what I look at is I do a lot of criminal defense work. About 75% is criminal defense work, and sometimes there's no easy answers. Your client is on videotape shoplifting. There's no doubt about it. He's guilty. He's confessed. But you might ask him some questions. You might try to find out what was he stealing. Was he stealing something that might be readily sold, and maybe there's an underlying drug problem? You try to get him to get some drug treatment. You try to make the best out of a bad situation. Now, I've been practicing law for 22 years, and that's kind of the way, and it's affected my outlook on many things. My family has significant ties to Craig County. My younger brother was named Craig Markland Tuck because we owned a farm over on 42. We had that farm until I turned 18, just past Simmonsville. And I know that, you know, my grandfather gave me my first shotgun. I killed my first squirrel over there. I had my first squirrel gravy over in Craig County at our cabin. Craig County is still a place when you're on 42 and you throw up your hand, the person coming at you on the road will still throw up theirs. It's a small rural county. For me personally, my family knows some eminent domain pain. My grandparents on the Tuck side, they lost their home. My dad had purchased their home after they died, and it was torn down to make Route 460 the latest bypass. I could see firsthand how that eminent domain helped people because I remembered all the accidents that used to take place. And anybody who used to come in and out of on 460 before the bypass was built remembers the traffic jams. And so I could see that. For this eminent domain, I don't see those type of benefits. So, and then finally a little bit more about myself. Why did I get involved with public service and local government is to try to help people. What do I see coming? To me, I see a deadline of tomorrow, and we're dealing with the end of the initial process. I hear a company that is going to put forward the route, and that is going to be their route probably in November or December. You've just heard legally that we don't have a lot of options. We can't just simply pass an ordinance and say no more pipeline. In regards to looking at and trying to predict the future, there's never been a pipeline that's been denied. And in my mind, past behaviors or past events is a good way to look at what might happen in the future. Despite all of the counties standing together and asking for a 90-day extension, including our congressional delegation, that was turned down. If any of you, and I know many of you went to the scoping meeting, part of what I do is I read people as an attorney. If you were there at that scoping meeting, I would ask you, do you believe that the FERC folks were there against the pipeline, neutral, or in favor of the pipeline? Okay? Then you look at the current administration that we have in Washington. They believe that global warming exists, and science supports that. And they believe that at this point in time, solar and wind are not the answers. They just are not sufficient. And they're looking to try to help the environment, and they believe natural gas is the best way to go. You're seeing coal-fired plants just like the one over in Glenlyn close. With those factors in mind, that's why I started looking at what are the alternatives. If this pipeline is going to be built, what's the best way? And for me, it's to affect the fewest amount of people first, and then the fewest landowners. That's why I would look at the 110, and that's why I would look potentially at 93. When this process started, I got a phone call from a young lady I went to school with. I got graduated from Gateway Christian Academy. My graduating class was 3. So to say I knew her and knew her well, knew her brother, played basketball with both of them, is an understatement. The 110 line is going to be going through her farm. And she called and she was pretty upset with me. And in talking with her, I said, for me, it's a matter of I might be able to help 50 people or 50 landowners. And when we continued the conversation, I said, you've got 2 brothers. The 3 of you are standing in front of me. I can't help 2 of you, but I might be able to help 1. Shouldn't I try to help 1 of you? Now, I'm not saying that she agreed with me at the end of the day, but I believe she knew where I was coming from. And one of the things that bothered me about the headline, it's not about just Montgomery County or Craig County or Giles County or Roanoke County. It's about people. And when I was looking at this again, Route 110 affects the fewest people. There's about 5,200 roughly in the last census, or 2013 in Craig County. In one of our districts, there's 13,000 people. If you look at the current proposed route, it runs right through a subdivision. Some people, and Jennifer thought, well, they've got public water, so if they have blasting, they're not going to lose their water, but that's not true. They don't have public water out in Preston Forest, and if there is blasting, there's a real chance that they might lose their water. Well, as far as one of the reasons I think I've been able to ask good questions is I've read your emails. A lot of you have helped me get prepared for these meetings by giving me good information to be able to ask good questions. And one of the emails I got back is saying, is there room for compromise? And there was this one little line talking about, well, maybe would you be willing to put in a phrase where it didn't put a specific route, such as 110 or 93, but simply said that if FERC determines that the economic benefits to our nation outweigh the environmental impacts to us and to our culture here in Southwest Virginia, that they select a route that affects the fewest citizens and the fewest landowners possible, while maintaining the safest route possible. Now, I know I've taken up a fair amount of time, and I apologize to you, but I felt like I needed to address that. If there is no consensus on this board for either a compromise or what I've suggested, I will continue to oppose this pipeline. If we pass the resolution I suggested, it starts off by saying we oppose this pipeline. And the only way that we would be looking at it is if if FERC determines that the economic benefits outweigh the impacts to our area. But if there's no consensus on this board in regards to that, I understand that. I would say there's no need to have a public address at this point in time if there's no consensus. But at the same time, if some board members want to hear from the public and want to hear what they have to say, I respect that. I would ask, and since I did ask for this meeting, that there's a lot of you here. And each one of you is going to be given 5 minutes, including our neighbors from Craig County and Roanoke County. And so I would ask that if someone has just got up and said exactly what you were planning on saying and that did so in a very eloquent fashion, maybe you raise your hand in support of it, or maybe you stand in support of it. But you don't get up and say the exact same things, because at some point in time tonight, we have to make a decision one way or the other, and we're probably going to make a better decision at 10 o'clock than we are at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, what Mr. Tuck is asking us as a board, is there any consensus to support his resolution that he's recommending? And we cannot take a formal vote in work session, but we can do consensus by thumbs up, whether we support it or not support it. And you can ask questions too if you like before we
I'd
do
like to
this.
say one thing before we do this consent. I want to applaud you, Chris, for everything that you have done for this pipeline. I know you're against the pipeline. You're just looking for an alternate route to least affect people in all counties, not just Montgomery. I know you didn't shove it that way just to get it out of Montgomery County. I know you didn't. I know you was looking at what it would least impact anybody, and I appreciate that. I really do.
Any other comments? Okay.
Well, I'm going to just go ahead and say that I don't support the resolution. I was very happy with the original resolution that we passed because it did answer what Marty said. FERC wanted why it shouldn't go through the proposed route that they had stated. And I thought we did that in a very good way. And we covered the ideas of the environmental impacts and the public safety and the property values and those kind of things. I thought it was a strong resolution. I still support that resolution. I might be in support of something that just restated those same things, but I am not in support of putting down a particular route. I don't feel that we should put neighbors against neighbors. I feel like that the communities could work together. I like the idea of the intervener, but I don't like the idea of stating that it would go in a particular place and it would impact other counties. And I felt that way the whole time. I like our original resolution, and I stand by my vote of support for it.
Okay, thank you very much. Much of what Ms. Biggs said, I'm going to say again. I think from day one, I've said to most of you who've asked me, I'm opposed to the pipeline, period. I don't think we should have it. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think any of the things that we've been told thus far, which is not by you all, but by the pipeline company. If they came to me wanting to have a business, I'd say, I don't think you all are going to be very successful. And so I just want to say from day one, I do also appreciate what Chris has been trying to do, but I would never, and I said this the other night when we first brought it out, that I would never ever support anything that said, don't put it in my backyard, but put it in your backyard. I would never do that. And I don't want to. I think it's fair. I think it's wrong. And I really, up to this point, we have just about explored every line of thought that you can imagine. As a board, as individuals, most of you out there have been so helpful to us, because each time you give us some new information, each time you give us some even when you restate the information that we have, it helps us to see where you all are coming from. And so I feel that I cannot support this resolution. Chris knows this. As long as those phrases are in there about where the specific lines should go. I remember standing at the Ramada having the FERC man say to me, you know, we oppose this, we don't want this. And he said, well, you haven't given me any other alternative. As if we gave him an alternative and that'd be okay. And I said, but you don't understand. We don't want it. I can't give you an alternative. There is none. And so he just dismissed me and off we went. But I will say that again. I know there are alternatives that they have, but it seems that each one of them has some real issues. But to put a pipeline through the middle of people's homes and land, it's the same question I asked in November. Have you no thought about property and property rights? And so I feel just as Ms. Biggs does, we had a really good resolution, not to say anything about Chris's resolution. It is, he was trying very hard to find something in some way to help us all and to help the most of the people. But to put in a pipeline and to say, well, I don't want this one, but I want this one, sounds to me as if you're saying, oh, well, it's okay to put the pipeline in, but just put it some other place. And so I guess I see it from that point of view. Chris sees it from another, some of our other board members see it from another point of view. But all I can say is that we will continue. We know about the preemptiveness of the federal government. How many things that come through the federal government in the terms of laws are not, let's say, that don't override the state's law. If the federal government's doing it, the preemption is, as Marty said to you, it's going to happen. Now, what can we do? Just keep on fighting? Do we give up? Do we just sit back on our hands? No, we keep saying again and again and again, we don't want it. We don't want your pipeline. We don't like the way you're doing it. A 42-inch pipeline, 300 miles long, these people, along with 2 or 3 other companies. I'm sorry, but they are just not what I think that a company should be. But if you go look at so many of the things that have come about that are economically advantageous and bring jobs in our past history, we have not worried about what they do to the environment. We haven't, that's why we're where we are. And I think that now people, such as yourselves, you all are more aware, as well as we are, of what dangers. Can you not find some jobs or some manufacturing or you name it that will not destroy the environment or hurt people? And that's something that I know people weigh, or that companies look at. Now I want to ask you, how many of you have mutual funds, stocks, bonds that are not mutual bonds? How many of you make your extra money from the stock market? Do you ever go to any of those meetings? Do you ever look at what those companies do? Why are the companies, okay, why are the companies doing what they're doing? Number one, you look at what they say and they say it's the stockholders. They have to be paid first. Now, I'm not saying you ought to go out and give up all your stuff, and I'm sure that all these people that are out there that are stockbrokers will not be very nice to me after I said that, but it's true. I had a friend, she scrutinized everything that she had as an investment, and she said, I'm not supporting that because either it affects the environment or it affects people's lives, their breath coming out of their bodies are affected by so many of these things. So, wonderful that, what was the woman's name that wrote about the spraying? I can't think of it, but anyway, she started it so long ago to say to us, we ought to be cautious. And when people go around saying, you're going to get economic benefits from it, forget it, because we're not. How much is it going to cost us to tap into it even? Instead of saying, and as somebody said, one of you all said to us, why don't we talk about what we can do and how we can seek alternative energies sources that are clean, from sun, from the wind, from a lot of different ways, rather than saying, we don't want this, we don't want that. This is not a fight on coal, but it will destroy coal, you know, if you keep going. But again, I ask you to look at the number of pipelines that now run through the United States of America, and you will be absolutely, totally mesmerized by it. You will say it can't be. I looked at a map the other day. There's hardly a place where there's not a pipeline of some sort or other. So, people from Craig that are here, we like you a lot. And we don't mean that it's better in your backyard than it is in ours. And Chris just spoke very eloquently to that, and I believe Chris with all my heart. So thank you. Just know that we are still working. We've done everything that we can do as a board right at this point, but we're going to still try to seek new ways to see what can happen, and particularly as it affects our environment. That's my grandchildren. That's your grandchildren. And my son grew up in this county when the yellow sulfur came out of the arsenal. How many people here had their livelihood in the arsenal? And do you remember what happened when first the government, the federal government, put in restrictions about the environment? And a lot of people became environmental engineers. There was a great big furor here. And maybe some of you were even part of that, because the emissions from there.
Ma'am, would you please hold it down so that other people can hear what's going on?
I don't mean to be encouraging emotionalism. I just mean to be looking at it straightforward and saying, no, that's it, but we'll keep on working and keep on trying. Thank you very much. But that's up to my constituency. Thank you.
Any other comments? Well, I'm going to have a few brief ones. First thing I want to do, I want to thank Mr. Tuck. Mr. Tuck has been very dedicated to serving his constituents, not only in his district, but the entire county. And Mr. Tuck, I know that your heart is on the right side, but I just cannot agree and support the resolution. When it comes to pitting neighbor against neighbor, that really concerns me. When this resolution would pit us against Craig, maybe Roanoke and things like this, the first thing we should do is be banding together. And trading strategies and see what can we do as a group. And I think, you know, maybe there's Giles, there's Craig, there's Roanoke, and there's Montgomery. There's a whole lot of people in those 4 counties. And I mean, we can make a lot of noise. I don't know if we can get anything done, but we can sure make a lot of noise with FERC. I wasn't impressed with FERC down at that meeting down at Eastmont. I thought they were kind of mean myself. But I cannot support the resolution. Now, if we want to get consensus in work session, if the resolution is not supported, let's give a thumbs down on it to give our position on the resolution. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 of us. Resolution is gone. But I think did he want to offer another one?
Can I ask about
Can offer another one.
Marty's?
Any other?
And that's what I was looking to see. If there was a discussion about alternatives, I'm happy to have that. If no one wants, if Mary's position is that of the board, which is that we want to stand on what we've said previously, I'll support that amongst the board. I felt like this was a very important conversation to have because if the current proposed route goes through, it goes right through a subdivision. And so that's where my concerns were, as I said, about people. If there's a compromise, I'm all ears and I'm willing to talk about it because, as I said in the previous meeting, I'm not saying I'm 100% right. I'm saying that this is what I believe, and I want to be able to look myself in the mirror and say you tried to help as many people as you could.
But you know, my thoughts are, I said if it was 110, and we said, yeah, 110 is okay. I believe MVP would make the assumption that this county supports 110, and I don't want to support anything with them.
Is it worth offering an alternative resolution, just reiterating our opposition to the pipeline and outlining or extending our reasoning behind that? You know, although the Mountain Valley people have not been particularly forthcoming in the meetings that we've had for them, we have had several meetings since then, and there have been other FERC filings that have come to light that may allow us to extend the reasoning, or at least bring to FERC's attention the reasonings behind our opposition.
And then the other thing I mentioned is eliminating 110 or 93 and simply saying we don't approve the pipeline. We stand on that, but if FERC approves it, and that's, again, it's not us suggesting it would be FERC approving it, that we would look at the route that would affect the least amount of people. Now, it's Mary's point, I'm still willing to stand on that, and if that's where there's no compromise, I'm okay. And I'll continue to stand with you.
I have a question. What about the information that our attorney sort of put together about that's in front of us?
I asked him to put that together, but at the same time, if there's no compromise out there, if there's no need, if it's your position, then I'm willing to stand with you on that aspect of things and still continue to support you, even though I don't think it's the right decision. I do believe that this board on this issue should stay as united as possible. And it's, again, this is not, when I looked at this, I understood that my resolution, I might not be doing the right thing, but in my mind, it was the best thing. And I had to be able to look myself in the mirror and say, hey, there was going to be 158 people affected. Maybe you can get it down to 100. Maybe you can get it down to 50. And that's the way I looked at it. And but at the same time, if it's your position, no compromise, stand on it, I'll continue to support that.
Let me say one thing.
Okay, that's great.
I actually went for a ride about 4 months ago, I guess, with one of the gentlemen from FERC. And let's just put it this way, I don't appreciate anybody when they lie to me. And that's exactly what I got out of it. So they can't count on me for voting on anything that has to do with with FERC,
Are you saying you went riding with FERC or Mountain Valley Pipeline?
with Mountain Valley Pipeline.
That's what
I'm sorry.
I hope you didn't mind me correcting you,
Yeah.
but that's,
Yeah.
okay.
You're correct.
Well, I think also one of the things we need to continue to look at is whether or not they have the compressor station in Catawba Valley. That's again part of the environmental deal, and
I think some, not to interrupt, I think
everybody
some,
else talked about it.
no, but I think some of the things that Marty put together on this listing
I like this
that
list.
talked about
Yeah.
that concern, because that
Yeah.
is one of the biggest issues
that we
that's
have.
out, well, that and the effect on the Preston Forest,
Right.
Brush Mountain area.
Mary, the first part of the list talks about developing alternative routes, and that's why I thought you didn't want them to do. You just simply wanted to stand on that you're going to oppose it. That's the reason I didn't put that forward.
Yeah, I like the points that are on here.
Yeah.
I didn't say I like the beginning, I like the points.
Yeah.
Like, do we need to restate our points that we've already made and send it, since you want, tomorrow's the cutoff? I mean, I'm happy with the original resolution. I think it is a strong resolution, and it states a lot of research went into that resolution, and thanks to all the citizens out there that gave us so much information, and for Marty for helping us to come up with something that was a strong statement like that. So I'm happy with the original resolution, but I think that these points are good points that are
What
up
about, what about reiterating these points? What happened is, what we sent, was it November or whenever it was, November?
It was back in the fall.
Back in the fall. That's maybe on their back burner,
Yeah.
and this is an opportunity to put it on their front burner again.
And if I could, I absolutely
Yeah.
agree, and I think it's worth reiterating again that we passed this resolution in November, and we've gotten new information, and we remain opposed to the to the pipeline, even given all this new information that's been presented to us. Is that this has nothing has changed our mind, and in fact, it's increased our resolve to support our citizens and to oppose this pipeline. And I think that's an important statement to make.
Comments? Okay. So,
Yeah.
So, Mr. Gabriel, are
Well, I guess we
you...
need to go through public.
Wait.
I'm
Yeah.
withdrawing mine, but if
Okay.
there's another resolution that you're putting out forward,
Well, I just had a question. Mr. Gabriel, were you thinking of making that in some kind of resolution, and then you could
I
put
don't
these
think
points with
necessarily
it, or?
think it needs to be a resolution. I mean, if
But
there's
just a
consensus of the
statement?
board, we could just ask Mr. Meadows and Mr. McMahon to prepare a document, just simply outlining.
To send tomorrow?
and then it needs to be, the deadline is tomorrow.
Yeah, it needs to be set immediately.
Yeah, and so,
That's
yeah.
fine with me.
It'll be tomorrow.
Yeah, if we get out of here by tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Would
you
that,
want
would that be an
consensus.
appropriate course of action, or do you think a resolution would be?
I think just a motion asking that staff prepare, comments for FERC, asking them to continue to study those impacts that we outlined in the previous, it's also in this list I prepared, and that they look at that and they address those in the impact statement that they're preparing, and that they urge them to try to avoid, minimize, and mitigate those adverse impacts.
Okay.
And in conclusion,
Yeah.
and in conclusion, the board is still opposed to this
I like that.
pipeline as
Given all the
proposed.
information
Given
we've
all the-
received since.
I think it would be
Better.
helpful to have a resolution authorizing staff to file that.
Okay.
And that won't leave any,
Okay.
We can do that.
any alternative. And I really do want to say one more time, I wasn't putting the onus on your back about your stocks or anything else. What I really wanted us to think about is that oftentimes we have to balance out economic development or our own economic futures with those kinds of things that are not good for the environment or really not good for the people. And so that's what I'm thinking. And we really do have to balance those. And that's what we're trying to do here, because we keep hearing people say, you're going to get a lot of economic development out of this. And I don't see where it is. And maybe somebody does and can convince me, but thus far, I don't see it. So, with apologies to Greg and to Roanoke County and to Roanoke, all of our other friends, I do know that and having conversations with the people in Franklin County or with the powers that be in Franklin County, they support the pipeline. So anyway, that's where it goes.
Can I make a motion to go out of work session?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Have a motion and a second to go out of work session. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Perkins?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye. Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Chair Brown?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Our next order of business is a public address. Now we will begin our public address portion of the meeting. Those wishing to speak who did not sign up will be allowed to address the board following those speakers whose names are listed on the sign-up sheets. Each speaker will be allowed 5 minutes, whether speaking as an individual or a representative. If you would like to leave written comments or statements, they may be left given to our board clerk over there, who will distribute them to the board. Visual presentations such as PowerPoints are not accepted the day of the meeting. As a reminder, public address is for the purpose of allowing citizens to present comments to the board and shall not serve as a forum for debate with the board or among speakers. The board will not generally respond to questions or provide answers during the public address. Speakers will be judged to be out of order and will be asked to cease should the speaker engage in a personal attack or debate with the audience. In addition, accepted etiquette at a board meeting is not to applaud or to make responses after someone speaks. Please begin your remarks by stating your name, your address, and address all comments to the board chair and the board from the speaker's lectern at the front of the room. Here are the names that I have signed up to speak, and I'm going to call these names so things can move on. I'm going to call 3 names. The first name will speak first, the second name second, and third name. Once that third name has spoken, I'm going to call 3 more names, and I ask that the people move to the front of the room so they can get to the lectern quicker, and so it will save some time while we're here. And I have probably about 28, 29 names. The first name I have is Martha Mary, Angela Stanton, and Will Stanton. So it's a couple seats up front here. That yeah, Martha, you can first, and Will and Angela can come up and take these 2 seats up front.
I'll actually restate my name. It's Martha Murphy, and I'm from Craig County. I'm a resident in Craig. The pipeline is proposed to go, the alternate Route 110 is proposed to go right through my property. And I'm also a member of the Board of Supervisors of Craig County. So I really appreciate the job you're doing tonight. I had a very short statement prepared, but many of the things that I was going to ask you for, you've actually restated in your discussion following the presentation. So I just want to say thank you very much for the decisions that you've made tonight to withdraw the resolution the way it was written. It's clear that you unanimously are going to spend energy to fight the pipeline, and as your neighbors in Craig County, we really appreciate that. We need your leadership. The size of your county helps us make our message even stronger. Coming from the small county with only 5,000 total people in our county, we really appreciate that, and we need you to write the comment that you're planning to write tonight. Just want to make a comment about what we did in Craig. As of Friday, we did submit a 200-page response to FERC in answering all of the 20 different areas that will be addressed on the EIS about all of the things in Craig that should be mitigated, considered, that we want to protect. And I think it was a super strong communication to the FERC to say that we really care about our county. We mentioned an awful lot of ideas that were regional. Of course, many of those things taking place here in Montgomery County, so we appreciate you being a partner with us in the region and fighting the pipeline. And we agree that MVP is probably not the company that should be proposing a 42-inch high-power, high-pressure pipeline coming through our environment. So thank you very much for your comments tonight.
No, thank you.
What they said, I mean, will they provide a copy?
I'm Angela Stanton from 2595 Spalding Road in Montgomery County. I'll keep this short because obviously things have changed since I wrote my remarks. But I would like to comment on one thing that Supervisor Biggs said. The rationale you had for your original resolution was a very good one. However, in that resolution it did state that if Mountain Valley Pipeline were to reroute the proposed gas pipeline away from the residential communities to areas that are unpopulated, not containing residences, the Board of Supervisors may reconsider opposing the construction of the pipeline. If you are considering doing another resolution, I hope that language goes away. The language that Mr. Tuck had in the original proposal about complete opposition to the pipeline, both in Montgomery County and the region, I think should be included in that. I think Supervisor Gabriel also referenced that again tonight. So I actually do hope that you will consider doing a second resolution that actually shows complete opposition to the pipeline, because you would actually be the first Board of Supervisors to say that you oppose all the routes of the pipeline and not just the routes in Montgomery County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Never thought about that, really. I didn't think about that one.
Hi, I'm Will Stanton, 2595 Spalding Road in Montgomery County. And like my wife, I have not as much to say now that you've already taken action on this, so most of my remarks are moot. I do want to say that what you did tonight is very important, not just for the MVP, but much beyond that. There are other pipelines that are being proposed to come this way. Williams Appalachian Connector is one that has a route that almost mirrors the one for the MVP. If energy corridors are to come about, and that seems like the federal government is pushing that, then whatever route is chosen might not be for one pipeline, but for several. I think it is very important to come out opposing all pipelines, all routes of pipelines. They're none good for us. They're going to other places and not benefiting us. And I've been a game player most of my life. I have been in decision making. My degree, doctorate is in decision sciences. That's what I study, how decisions are made and how competitors look for your decisions and ways of making them. So as you sat here tonight and made your deliberations, I don't doubt for a minute that the MVP, Williams, Columbia, other pipeline companies watch what you say, watch what you do, and try to determine what sort of game player you are. If it comes down to another pipeline, will you rattle your sabers but ultimately acquiesce? Or will you stand up on your hind legs and bark and say, absolutely not, don't come our way? You send messages every time you have a meeting, and everybody watches them. We can't be here, we watch the videos too. So thank you, Mr. Tuck, thank you too for everything you've done. I appreciate all your help for the county. You have certainly looked after us, and I would say we've enjoyed our interaction with you. For some other reason other than like. Thank you.
Tom Hoffman, Nan Gray, Pat Tracy.
My name is Tom Hoffman, and I live at 135 Davis Lane in Harrisburg. And if I'm talking too loud, the last time I was up here, I saw myself on tape and I could barely hear myself. So I'm trying to speak up a little bit on the thing here. If you read the Roanoke Times, you know how the Roanoke Times feels about the pipeline. You know, they just want everybody to be good little boys and girls and just sit there, you know, shut up and sit down and shut up, because, you know, there's nothing we can do about it, FERC or UPT, because they consider them to be God, apparently. Now, what I did, however, they did print a letter from me yesterday, Sunday, which I'm going to read here. I say that I'm tired of the condescending attitude of this newspaper toward citizens opposing the Mountain Valley Pipeline. You are treating us like small children who need adults to tell them to eat their vegetables. My first letter to the editor was published in the Washington Post in 1966 when I was 18 years old. It was in opposition to a Washington area highway project that would have destroyed a lot of parkland. Eventually, the project was defeated and the money transferred to the Metro Rapid Transit System. Now here's my point. This was the heyday of nationwide highway construction. Conventional wisdom held that the highway lobby and the state DOTs were invincible. Well, we proved them wrong up in Washington. They proved them wrong in a lot of other places too. So I'm saying that citizens are not powerless. This is not China or North Korea, and we have no intention of giving up. And I think Chair Brown said it best. That we need to we need to present a united front against these pipeline companies. A united front, and that means no route anywhere. I don't care, 110 or 93 or 6013. We don't want it anywhere. Get the hell out of the state. Thanks a lot.
Mr. Brown, could you perhaps remind the audience that they should leave things with Ms. Swinney and not distribute them to us? Thank you.
My name is Nan Gray. I'm a citizen of Craig County. And if you would please, whoever controls the slides, go back to number 10. In the meantime, you were talking about socially responsible investments, and I would just like to point out that the people of Craig County 25 years ago plus objected to the 765 American Electric transmission line that was proposed at that time. We made our socially responsible investment 25 plus years ago. We said no because we like living the way we do. It's not a hardship for us, it's a preference. And having said that, I don't know if your camera puts this on the screen or not, because we're still at page 25 of the questions. Anyway, I'll show you all. Yeah. This is Sinking Creek Mountain. Regardless of what you think about day to day, it is a landform. It's like the folds and the valleys of this part of the world, except Sinking Creek Valley in Craig County is the only other raised valley in Virginia. Burke's Garden is the other raised valley. If you have ever been to Burke's Garden, you'll know it's beautiful. And forgive me, I don't know if you could hear me. Burke's Garden is the other raised valley in Virginia. It's a wetland. It's a wetland. It's a wetland. Sinking Creek Valley is a wetland. And I just ran a field tour in April showing, highlighting the damp lands, intermittently wetlands and wetlands of Sinking Creek Valley, Johns Creek Valley, Craig's Creek, and also around Newcastle. The place is wet. Sinking Creek Valley is all karst. All karst. And on the outsides, we have all kinds of other things on the outside of Sinking Creek Mountain. I'm really glad you changed your resolution. For your record, I would like to say my executive summary on this field trip. Regarding the application of Mountain Valley Pipeline, FERC docket PF 15-3 to cross lands with a fracked gas pipeline, the following material was presented to the Southeastern Friends of the Pleistocene Annual Field Excursion for 2015. The Southeast Friends of the Pleistocene areas lie within the proposed pipeline routes and/or would be impacted by the construction of a pipeline. This area should be designated as a national do not construct zone due to the findings of Select Water Properties investigated in my report, which is a 48-page document including references. The Southeastern Friends of the Pleistocene Annual Field Excursion for 25th of April 2015. The title of the field excursion was Damp Lands, Intermittently Wetlands and Wetlands of the Valley and Ridge Province of Southwest Virginia. compiled by me, Nan Gray. I have a master's in agronomy. I'm a licensed professional soil scientist. The executive summary of this document that I sent to FERC: wilderness and undisturbed areas enhance the physical stability of an environment to be able to tolerate more rainfall and disperse water more slowly, lessening erosion, lessening infilling of sediments, and decreasing the risks of water contamination by decreasing erosion and mass wasting. Influences of population pressure will continue to affect erosion into all damp lands, wetlands, intermittently wetlands, unless adequate buffers such as no-build zones are created. Geologic power will change a stable landscape, and the Saltville Fault is still active as of 2011. We felt the Louisa County earthquake in Craig County. Paraglacial influences. Paraglacial means really intense cold. We didn't have a mile-thick sheet of ice over Sinking Creek Valley, but that place was full of water and it froze, just like Mountain Lake froze. Paraglacial influences are considered here to extend to the Sinking Creek Valley as one long paraglacial lake during the last ice age, which affects our water now. Siliceous fragipans and calcareous fragipans impact water movement through the soil profile.
That means your time's up.
The last statement then I'll
your
say
time's
is
up.
no build zone is what we need. We need to create a no build zone. Thank you.
Pat Tracy.
Tracy. I live at 1110 South Jefferson Forest Lane in Blacksburg. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And I now don't have to spend any time trying to talk Mr. Tuck out of his resolution. And I'm wearing a t-shirt from Craig County to show solidarity between Montgomery, Preserve Montgomery, and Craig. But I would like to say one thing now that all that's happened has happened. I think this is a good lesson in how to move forward in unity with other counties. And I hope you all would take the lesson that you might join with the boards from other counties to try to create a regional response at the government level. We are already doing that at the citizen level. And we would really appreciate your working with Roanoke and Craig and Giles and any other county that will join in to see what you can do to have a louder, more effective voice with FERC. I think your voice will count more, perhaps, than ours will. So we hope you will move forward from this point in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bill Henley, Cindy Turner, Linda Majors.
So I sent you an email. Oh, Bill Henley,
okay.
4321 Shady Grove Lane in Montgomery County. Sorry. And I really appreciate the sincerity of this board, everybody. So I sent you an email today about the sinkhole field that exists from Mount Tabor Road to the base of Brush Mountain, okay? It is a special case of karst. Literally, in that area that's probably 2,000 meters long, there is one sinkhole after another. It's a special case of karst. And I want you to entertain that none of the routes are suitable. We do not have to choose one over the other. There are pros and cons for each one, but the alternative Route 93 route is a terrible karst-intensive route for the pipeline. But now that the resolution has been turned down, I want to devote to one other thing. I am a research scientist in environmental sciences, and I work with groups that work with problems that are so big that one person can't handle it.
Would you provide a microphone, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. I work with problems, environmental problems that are so big that one person cannot handle them. It takes groups to handle these really big anthropogenic, anthropomorphic impacts. I'm from North Carolina. Don't. But anyway, so on these big projects, we form groups that address subcomponents of them, and that's the approach we should take here. As a group, we can deal with this. As a group, we can deal with this. As people, individual people who are competing against one another, we will not be able to do it. I assure you, I've dealt with these kind of big problems over and over again. We have to act as a group, not as competing individuals. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Cindy Turner. I live at 1690 Ellett Road in Christiansburg. And part of what I have to say may sound or seem a little moot at this point, but I'm going to say it anyway for two reasons. One is I want to stand by you as you have stood by us tonight, and I thank you very much for that. And the other is, as Mr. Stanton pointed out, we may have more battles on the horizon, and we need to be prepared for those. What I know of Mr. Tuck, I believe him to be a man of very high integrity, a good man, and a man with worthy motives. Excuse me. I appreciate your heart with your notion of encouraging the least populated route for this pipeline, but I didn't agree with it. But I appreciate you sticking your neck out for what you felt was the right thing to do. I applaud that. I'm not an NB. None of these proposed routes come very near my property. I am an NBY. I want this in nobody's backyard. While it may be true that no pipeline has ever been turned down, some community, some neighborhood, somebody's hometown will be the first. Why not us? Some years ago, AEP wanted to bring a major power line through Giles County. Folks said you can't beat them, they're too big, they're too powerful, but they fought anyway and they won. If we don't fight this on every level, we will not win on any level. So I ask you to not compromise. To quote a pastor I once heard, he said, compromise is failure on an installment plan. I ask you instead to continue to lead us forward, and I appreciate all that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Linda Mages. I'm at 2620 Mount Tabor Road, and I thank you for standing up on your hind legs. I don't have to say what I prepared to say about alternate 93 in the Cars Field and what the Department of Conservation and Recreation had put in June 11th. I support what the previous speaker said, and Will and Angela Stanton, and thank you so much for standing with us.
Thank you. Phil Pickett, Bill Murray, Elizabeth McConnell.
Chairman Brown, I'm Phil Pickett. I appreciate.
If you're going to speak, you need to come up to the.
Thank you, Chairman Brown.
Thank you.
I'm Phil Pickett on 2620 Mount Tabor Road, where I've lived for the last 27 years. I appreciate the board for hearing us all. I appreciate you, Squire Tuck, for your work with this committee, and I really appreciate that. Based on all the information that we've gotten, the vote of the Board of Supervisors, I decline to speak further. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Bill Murray. I live at 401 Gibbons Lane, and I brought y'all a copy of Blue Ridge Outdoors because there's an article in here. If you turn to page 10, it's about the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, which sounds a lot like what MVP's doing, and this will be nice and sweet. There's a picture here. If you look at the picture on page 10, there's a National Forest brochure with a before and after picture of the easement for the pipeline. That easement is 75 feet wide and it's barren. It's essentially a maintenance access. It goes right over. MVP neglected, forgot, or just plain didn't tell us about that. And the lower right hand side, you got another guy with a poster touting property rights, which is something that we just started hearing tonight. The other high points, there are so many reasons not to have this pipeline, or any pipeline. It looks like Virginia's become the crossroads of pipelines for natural gas. There are so many reasons not to have it, and I came at this with an open mind. And I kept waiting for MVP to tell me what benefit are we going to have, and they didn't. It's a high-risk proposition for the county and anybody who has to deal with it, with no benefit, not low benefit, no, there's nothing there. It impacts the National Forest, private property rights. We also have to deal with wildlife. And there's just new work. I read pretty much everything I get my eyes on. Wildlife is changing in Montgomery County because of stormwater management. We're getting there's wildlife reclaiming habitat. People are telling me they see coyotes. Oh wait, no, they're not coyotes, they're a hybrid. The hybrid has a name, wolf. They're coming in. There's been reports of bears coming down off of Colbank Holler, even as close as Mount Tabor Road. There's big cats being reported in the eastern part of the county, bobcats. Someone said mountain lion, but probably not that. And the last thing to address what Marty presented in this article, the Southern Environmental Law Center has a case pending in federal court for the pipeline they talk about in this article. How that goes may impact us, may not. But in short, there's no route that's acceptable for the pipeline without getting the answers that Mountain Valley has failed to provide us. And apparently the other pipeline companies are just as bad. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Elizabeth McCommon, 1400 Crestview Drive, Blacksburg. And I was at a town council meeting the other night where some of the most important comments were hard for me to hear because people were coming back from their microphones and talking to each other, but you're also talking to us, so make sure we hear every precious word. And some of you are better at getting close than others. But thank you. It is so gratifying to see the results of your hard work over this last year. It just warms my heart. And I'm going to miss you so much, Chairman Brown, because I've seen you at work for many years. And Mr. Tuck, I was told about a year ago by a lawyer friend who works for the State Corporation Commission that there were no legal avenues open to us to oppose this. All of this, all of the pipelines. You can't go to the courts, you can't go to FERC. You're going to have to find a way to raise the volume. Unify voices all over the state of Virginia. And it is my conviction that eliminating that little caveat about we don't want the pipeline, but if you put it somewhere else, I think that's what undermines your saying no and understanding that you really have no power with these people. And I feel like I understand what you have tried to do for your constituents and the people in Montgomery County. Find the best out of the worst of situations. But I don't think you have to do anything or say anything except no. That will resound the loudest everywhere. And oh, thank you for saying no. I think we're keeping the fossil fuel industry on a life support system. And I was just told by a physicist a few days ago that if we had not discovered that horizontal hydraulic fracturing, we would probably right now be inventing the most marvelous alternative energies there were. But now we can sell it abroad. And FERC has been taken to court for its agreement, for its allowing the construction of the Cove Point gas liquefaction, whatever it is. That's where our gas is going to go. And you know that it's 2 to 4 feet above sea level there at Cove Point? And the projections are that by 2050, the water level will have raised at least 2 feet at that point in the upper Chesapeake Bay. I don't think FERC thinks any better than MVP people. I think they're looking at the dollar sign, and the dollars have to do not with you and me, but with the corporations. So thank every one of you, and especially your heartfelt effort to serve Montgomery County in a questionable way. But thank you.
Bill Turner, Brad Klein, and Murray Keffer.
My name is Bill Turner. I live at 1690 Elliott Road, Christiansburg. I might reiterate a little bit of what is said before, but I think in a united front, we'll do a whole lot better. No, none of the certificates may have been denied, but MVP must be really going to be making a lot of money. And I think if we get united and oppose this pipeline, do everything we can to make it as difficult as we can for them to accommodate proceeding with this, we stand a much better chance of them saying, look, let's just give up and go home. My property is not in the crosshairs of this farce, and it's a fiasco, we all know, but I would stand as united with the people who are in the crosshairs as I would hope that they would stand with me if I were in the crosshairs. Let's just, and one suggestion I would make to this board would be to form with other boards. Y'all communicate as much as you can to be able to put on that united front. But I think we can win this thing, but we do have to be united, and I think Mr. Tuck has taken more heat than he should have deserved. And I think I know where he's coming from. And I think it's just basically, they gave us the options and we took the bait, in a sense, and saying, well, if they say this is okay, then we've got it made. But like other gentlemen have said, and other people have said, we've got more pipelines coming down the pipe. If you've got to know that they're studying what we're doing so they can figure out how they can defeat us in getting their pipeline in if it does not. So we need to really push and push hard and make it not worth their while so they can make those millions of dollars. I thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brad Klein. I live at 4656 Susanna Drive. I first wanted to, again, thank the board for all the work that they've done over the past several months on behalf of the citizens of Montgomery County, and Mr. Tuck as well. And I just didn't agree with your decision, with your resolution. I thank the board for their decision tonight. It was actually worth missing my league softball game for. And it was a nice tribute to the 800th anniversary of the Magna Carta today, as well. But I would just like to, again, pitch for you folks working collectively and in a united fashion, and particularly with other counties who oppose the pipeline. And I would also ask that, would you please if possible, include some of the new information, environmental information that's come to light since your last resolution. If you could possibly include that in whatever you're putting together to send to FERC, it would be much appreciated. And again, thank you for your efforts over the months.
Thank you. Mary Keffer?
My name is Mary Keffer, 9990 Cumberland Gap Road, Newcastle, Virginia. Thank you for this, for your comments and for this opportunity to speak before you this evening. Preserve Craig, Inc. Would like to share a few important points about Craig County with you tonight. Craig County is not empty space where the environment can easily absorb the insults of pipeline construction without disruption. Concern was expressed about the impacts to the Roanoke River and Craig's Creek and to endangered species. In truth, alternate 110 routes that this recommends will still impact those streams, just not in Montgomery County. There are actually more issues with critically endangered species in Craig and Roanoke counties than in Montgomery, but we should work together to protect all those species in all three counties. The region's water supplies are protected by the pristine mountains of Craig County and the Jefferson National Forest. Sinking Creek is a valuable contributor to the regional water supplies to the New River and the recreational opportunities on the New River that Montgomery County residents value so much. Craig County's Sinking Creek watershed provides an abundance of clean water to the river that is ultimately enjoyed by all. Excavation of the Mountain Valley Pipeline across this very steep mountain slopes in Craig County could have broad impacts to the water quality and quantity to the entire region. The threats of the Mountain Valley Pipeline are threats to the quality of environment and life in our entire area, not just whatever counties it might pass through. Environmental damage and environmental justice have nothing to do with county borders. We all enjoy a high-quality environment in this area, and we should stand together to fight the attack of the Mountain Valley Pipeline on our environment and on our values anywhere in our region. It is clear to us that regional unity in opposition to this project will be required to stop the Mountain Valley Pipeline project from damaging our area. Every county needs to use all of its expertise, community activation, and educational resources to cause the FERC to deny this permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Wolf, Roberta Bondurit, and Phyllis Albritton.
Hello. My name is Bill Wolf. I live in Sinking Creek, Virginia, at 4962 Little Mountain Road, Newcastle, Craig County. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for your opposition and hard work to oppose the Mountain Valley Pipeline. I want to give you a little background on Preserve Craig. I'm the co-chair of Preserve. Mary is on our executive committee, and we're here really to share with you some key ideas and opportunities. We did turn in two fairly lengthy documents for the record that we wanted to share with you, but we've obviously, based upon your actions tonight, rewritten some of what we're going to share. Preserve Craig has been in existence since 1991. My wife was president of it for almost 20 years. When she became ill, she asked me to make sure that we maintained it to protect the integrity and the resources of the region, not just Craig County. And it is a nonprofit charity. I believe that we have an incredible opportunity to defeat the MVP pipeline project. There are a number of reasons. I think the wind is in our sails. I think there are a number of mistakes that they have made, and they are not an ethical combination to be a utility and receive eminent domain authority. Our attorneys have found a number of cases where pipelines have not been built, either because they've been withdrawn or because they went bankrupt due to the delays in the process. So I think we need to be conscious that this is defeatable. There are key regional issues that we have an opportunity to work together on. One of them is to communicate with our senators, our congressmen, and our governor. Another is to understand the complex regulations and work together to put up clear requirements that all of the watershed requirements be handled. There, in one of the documents I've circulated, there are some examples. We as Preserve Craig will be submitting close to 500 pages of documentation listing numerous key issues that must be addressed in the EIS. One of them involves the fact that there's a question about the ethics of even accepting an application and certainly granting an application for a firm whose major managing partner has been convicted of environmental crimes in the state of Pennsylvania. That will be going on the record in the FERC files, including the actual crime documents and their, etc., this evening. Another involves the need for this line versus other options, and there are numerous other options. There is also the issue of cumulative effects of all of the pipelines, and there is strong pressure, and we need to join together to require an EIS that looks at all of the pipelines that involve the Marcellus area and the options for moving that gas. Finally, I want to note that MVP updated its website recently in the last 2 or 3 days, talking about the risks of delay and the possibility that survey problems will delay the pipeline and cause financial problems and possibly even halt the project. Finally, I want to talk about water. In terms of alliances, this is actually a t-shirt produced by Monroe County, West Virginia, and we're all in this together. I appreciate Pat's wearing Preserve Craig's t-shirt recently in an earlier presentation, and I want to share with you and leave this bottle of water with you, because this is where we are part of a key watershed for the entire mid-Atlantic, and we need to protect that offer. We believe that bottled water sells for a lot more than gas every day, and this is bottled water from a spring that originates on National Forest on Peters Mountain and is a fundraising tool for Monroe County. With that, I hope you'll take some of these ideas to heart. We, as an organization, look forward to working with you on an ongoing basis, and we think you have an opportunity, like Roanoke County has, to ask to be some form of participating agency in this process as a cooperating agency. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Roberta Bondurant. I live at 11577 Bottom Creek Road. I'm in Bent Mountain, Virginia. I consider myself one of your neighbors, distant or not so distant actually. I'm about a mile from the Nature Conservancy property. We hear the train from your Ellett Valley from our house. My neighbors from the Catawba area in Roanoke County are Butch and Betty Kelly and Mrs. Louise Sheeler Garman here. And we all appreciate your decision making this evening. And Mr. Tuck, certainly we appreciate your really, obviously, conscientious effort to abide by the trust that's been placed in you. And that's apparent. Thank you. I'd like to address very briefly a couple of the concerns that you've mentioned, and really with respect to some of the things that your counsel, I believe, has indicated to you earlier. Highlight for you, again, as Mr. Wolf has said, that there's actually a tremendous amount of hope in the work we have ahead of us. One of the cases that came before us in a briefing to our Board of Supervisors was the Dominion versus Town of Myersville 2013 case. In that case, there was Frederick, Maryland counsel to the town, and Carolyn Elephant, an individual attorney representing the citizens of Myersville. When our presentation to the Board of Supervisors indicated, as you've heard this evening, that really the federal law preempts localities, period. The Myersville case was used in the Board of Supervisors presentation for that proposition. Struck me as so odd. Mr. Tuck, you and I know as criminal attorneys, you've always got to read the case. I did, and actually the decision was affirmed in part and denied in part. And in that case, you know, what you see even in that case, among many other cases that are before courts now, the rush of cases in pipeline cases that are waiting for a new court to make, to see an issue of first impression. The federal court in that case left it open for the state of Maryland Environmental Department to consider a question under the Clean Water Act. And what you see from that case, and what a phone call to the attorney Carolyn Elephant indicated, was that localities do have options to either look at their own local permitting, excuse me, I don't know what I'm doing wrong here, to look at their local permitting statutes, or as a last option, to create their own permitting statutes that may address certain things. Moving on quickly, you may also, we would also seriously ask you to engage with our Board of Supervisors. I believe Butch Church has written you all asking you to collaborate, and we had a conversation about that earlier. And I repeat that invitation. In a request, we've urged our Board of Supervisors to look at the economics and to enlist in a professional economic analysis in this case. For example, to challenge FTI's economic report. It is true that Roanoke's Chamber of Commerce affirmed this, but when you read the op-ed piece, you realize that they if I could ask for just a bit more time, they base their decision on, they base their opinion. You look at their numbers, 3 of the 4 numbers that they cited are numbers that came directly out of FTI's self-serving paid report. FTI refused, wholly disclaimed the economics that were provided to them, repeatedly and wholly disclaimed that report. The report means nothing. So some of the things that you'd look at in an economic analysis would be, what are the true costs to the community? One of those analyses were provided to FERC by a locality in the Charlottesville region, it may be Nelson County, by Keylog Economics. Thank you.
Thank you.
She's an attorney.
Her husband is a judge.
No, Phyllis Albritton, 1003 Highland Circle, and it's wonderful to see you all again. I really miss working together, but life goes on. Chris, I really appreciate your being a realist. You know I have the highest esteem for you, but I'm hoping for a miracle. I'm hoping for a miracle. And one part of this is biblical. We've all heard it, I'm sure, but I'm really grateful for your vote tonight because we're supposed to do unto others as we would like others to do unto us. I talked to you earlier on this issue. Our main concern is to preserve Mother Earth. And so much is going down today that is going against this. And we are here for our great-great-great-grandchildren. And so my prayer is that we can unite with other counties and possibly even take this to court. We are up against worldwide corporate. I'm a financial advisor. I heard what Annette said. There are socially responsible funds that we can go to. But at this point, we are so up against corporate America and corporate international. And if we can stop them in any way, if there's a way we could unite with other counties and bring it to court, it would be amazing. There really is no need for a pipeline anywhere because we are eventually going to go to solar and to wind. And I also understand that this pipeline, it'll be out of business, what, in 10 years or 20 years or something?
10 years, I think.
So I really appreciate your commitment, your concern, and your willingness to serve not only us, but Mother Earth. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Sandra Schollendecker, and then followed by Ken Stiles and Jennifer Finrich.
Thank you for giving us all an opportunity to speak. First of all, I was wondering if it's possible to get a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that was given tonight. A few weeks ago, I had written a letter to all of you. I received one response saying, good questions, but I hadn't heard from anybody else. And
can you give your address?
I'm sorry, 4254 Fortress Drive, Blacksburg, Virginia.
Thank you.
When a letter is written, can I expect a response or not?
When what is?
Was it letter or email?
Email.
I think everyone tries to respond the best they can, you know, when they can. So okay. if it got overlooked or something, hopefully you'll get a response.
All right. I don't know if you've addressed this in the past, but Roanoke has a pipeline advisory committee. Has Montgomery County ever discussed that and getting people on that? In the paper this morning, there was an article about the Radford ammunition plant trying to renew its burning permit, another whole topic. But Jill Dyken, an environmental health scientist with the federal agency, said by email, the current permit is based on standards that do not predict any excessive risk to the community. She indicated, however, that her agency is hindered by a dearth of specific information about pollution created by the burning. The lack of air sampling results to confirm emission at the open burning ground or to characterize air exposures in the community is a data gap limiting the agency's assessment of community exposure. My concern is if the compressor plant is put in our county or anywhere near, what can you do to make sure that the air quality for your constituents is of good quality? Are you just willing to take MVP's word, or will you do something else in order to assess the air quality? Also, I don't know whether or not you have addressed with Department of Transportation about the pipeline crossing Colbank Hollow near 460. That was something that I mentioned in my letter. We're afraid of an explosion, thus cutting off 460 and all access for fire equipment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, next we have Ken Stiles.
I'm Ken Stiles, 404 Piedmont Street, Blacksburg. I find it interesting, and it was voiced here by the Board of Supervisors, that many opponents of this pipeline would support it if there was some local benefit. This prejudiceism is interesting. It's no different than racism, ageism, or sexism. If it's here, it's good. If it's there, it's bad, because of some distance from your front porch. My question is, at what distance from your front porch does something become bad? If Virginia Tech Power Plant were to convert from coal to natural gas by tying into this pipeline to heat the dorms and light the desk lamps, I think many people would support it. However, if Randolph College or Hampton-Sydney were to do the same, it would be bad. I don't understand that. It's good here, it's bad there. And some would say that those who are directly impacted by this pipeline should have a greater say. I kind of agree with that. If it's going to cross a farmer's land, they should have a larger say than someone who lives 2-5 miles, a whole county away. But I think you have to take into consideration the end users of this pipeline. Those parents who might be employed in a manufacturing plant in Suffolk County. The child whose desk lamp might be powered so they can do their homework. They're going to benefit. Maybe we won't, but they will, which therefore we benefit when everybody benefits. It's about people, as you said. No economic benefit. I venture to say that everybody in this room, or most people in this room, have a 401k. I can guarantee you, you will benefit from this pipeline. Now, it may not be a job here, but your life will be better. I think we should look at the greater good of the people that will benefit from this pipeline. We all came here in cars, probably, powered by gas. I'm pretty sure the gas wasn't drilled in Montgomery County, nor refined here, but it went through somebody else's yard, somebody else's county, to get here so that we could benefit. Please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, Jennifer Finrich.
Jennifer Fenrich, 2344 Mount Tabor Road, and my property abuts the alternate Route 93. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for withdrawing a resolution. I can't tell you what a relief that is. Also, I agree with what several people have already said regarding uniting and being a united front. It would be great if maybe Montgomery County, you guys could be the first ones to organize this. You don't even have to go away. There's Skyping, or you could even do a conference call. But it would be great if all the counties could get together and support each other, because we all are all in this together. And then the other thing I want to say is, cannot two pipeline companies work together? East Tennessee and MVP. On Sunday night, my husband spent a lot of time, just like Ms. Perkins had said, and looked at all the different pipelines that are all over. I mean, it's nothing but a bunch of red dots all over. It's a wonder there's any white in our state. So why not already have two companies work together in avoiding our county, everybody else's backyard, because they're already using existing right-of-ways that the East Tennessee has to increase capacity. So why not expand the already approved right-of-ways, and then this way this will mitigate all these other issues that we have today. So just thank you again. I have a sigh of relief for at least right now. It's a little battle, but it's a good one. Thank you.
Thank you. See, Ursula Hafferty, Rita Klein, and Laura Berry.
Oh, here comes someone. Do they leave?
Oh, maybe.
Oh, here comes one.
Hi, I'm Rita Klein. I live at 4656 Susanna Drive. That's in Preston Forest. I really don't have anything to say except thank you. You've already heard all of what I had to say and acted on it, so thank you.
Thank you. Laura Berry.
Good evening, Laura Berry, 1371 Breckenridge Drive, Blacksburg, Preston Forest. And really, like everybody else has said, the things that I was going to say have already been touched upon. I know that you were sincere in your desire to help us, but I'm very glad that you have resolved to not take the route of putting it in Craig County. Instead, I think you've all made some wonderful points, and for goodness sake, please just work together, because that is how we are going to overcome this thing. I would say that one option that I don't think has been mentioned is for our county, along with the other counties, to approach our senators and representatives and require or request that they initiate some congressional hearings to reevaluate how FERC approaches this whole question, because what they have been clearly doing is rubber stamping. And so we would appreciate your help in taking that approach, because I think that is one thing that could be effective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, you have to go
David
after
Berry,
every single one of those.
Chris Roberts, Tina Badger. Oh, okay. Chris Roberts. Tina Badger.
He's gone.
That's it. That's it. If it's anyone who did not get an opportunity to sign up at the beginning of the meeting, now you can address the board and you have 5 minutes. So if it's anyone in the audience who'd like to come forward, please do so at this time. Okay, damn.
Jawad Furniture, 1600 Winslow Drive, Blacksburg. I thank all of you for your stand against the construction of this pipeline, especially Mr. Todd for these great questions. During the last meeting, the issue of national interest came up. Well, if this is really a matter of national interest, then we should all say yes to this pipeline. Self-interest should not play a role here, but it should be up to us to determine that. We should not let the folks in Washington to decide it. Last time I checked, their overall approval rating was awfully low. Let's hope that our representatives in the state and federal governments stand with us on this issue. If not, comes the next election, we should appropriately practice our right. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ray Roberts. I'm from Blacksburg, Virginia, 5101 McCoy Road. I've spent about 3 years living in Craig. I photographed a lot of Craig and Montgomery County also, and it was published in the Roanoke Times, so you've probably seen a lot of my pictures. It's a very beautiful area. It's one of our resources. We really do need to protect our resources. That's what draws all these people to this area. I'm a commercial developer, and I'm also a large Republican supporter and I support Chris Tuck in all his efforts. Hope he doesn't leave the room. But anyway, he's going to sleep like me. But anyway, I think that there is an alternative to just responding to this. I think we can go in and actually create legislation from the grassroots up that will have an effect on Mountain Valley Pipeline. It will actually remove their corporate entity, and we can remove their corporate entity to do pipeline. Remove pipeline in our county, it would be Montgomery County, and that would pull the rug out from under them, and they would not be able to stand up in court and sue us. And that's what they're doing with Dominion right now. They're suing about 150 entities, property owners in Dominion. So that's the next wave of what's going to happen, because we won't allow these surveys. The 2004 legislation that was passed in the state of Virginia to amend the Constitution, I think is a violation of our Constitution, and it should be revisited. I talked with Senator Haggard's office today. He wrote 3 laws that were tabled and maybe retabled in January to change this legislation. The 2004 legislation allows the surveyors to violate property rights in Virginia, and he was not aware at the time that it was going to be used to do that, and they're doing it massively right now. They're suing 150 people in Dominion, and we've probably got about 200 property owners in just Craig and Montgomery County I can count that will have lawsuits filed against them, and they've done nothing
other than own property and pay taxes. So hopefully, I love Montgomery County Supervisors. I think you guys have got the ability to actually write grassroots legislation that would change the standing for Mountain Valley Pipeline in the state of Virginia. They are a for-profit entity. The state constitution written in '71 by a Virginia lawyer says corporations for profit cannot have access to eminent domain. They are getting access to eminent domain right now through this method, and I think that you have the ability to reverse that on the grassroots, and what you will see is we'll have the Attorney General come down here and tell us we can't do it, and we might even have the Governor tell us we can't do it, but the truth is the power originates from the people. We the people write the laws, and we can change the laws, and that's where everybody forgets in the long run here, so maybe this can happen in our favor. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? Seeing no one else, we'll close our public address session.
Bill, I would like to tell the board that I got a couple of CDs from a member. I just got them not long ago, as to how the Roanoke County people had formed their committees and the things they said. And
okay,
so,
speaking your mic a little bit. So okay.
I'm sorry, and I plan to share those with the board too. So I'm going to turn those over to you, Craig, and see if we can all do that. But thank you very much.
I guess item under new business is dead, right? Subject A, Mountain Valley Pipeline Resolution. Let's go. Where else we have here? Okay.
Mr. Brown, would this be an appropriate time to make a motion to direct staff to write a letter to FERC on the board's behalf outlining or reiterating our opposition to the pipeline and with the new information provided by the county attorney about items that we would like them to consider in their EIS report, as well as stating that despite the new information that we had received from Mountain Valley Pipeline and that we gathered ourselves, we are in fact strengthened in our opposition to the pipeline coming into Montgomery County.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is it any discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. Tuck?
Aye.
Mr. Gabriel?
Aye.
Mr. Creed?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Ms. Perkins?
Aye. That'd be interesting.
Chair Brown?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Any other business for this evening?
Just a question.
Okay.
You know the regional cooperation piece of it, is there a way, or does our board feel like that we should somehow make contact officially with Craig County and Roanoke County through the county administrator, or what should we do?
I know Craig has been talking to Roanoke County and he's been talking to Craig County. You've been talking to Giles County too.
And he had
Right.
Nelson County.
Yeah, and I saw, and last week at the VLGMA conference, I had a conversation with Nelson County. So yes, we're conversing and we're trying to get common information back together.
That'd be good.
And that's why I wanted to get those CDs to Craig to be sure that.
Might I say that anybody that we might even come in contact with, let's try to get them in on this thing as well, and let as many people as we can take notice of it and know that we're seriously fighting and doing the best things that we can do.
And we've certainly shared that, and I want to thank the folks that are still here and some of the folks that have left earlier. You guys are doing a fabulous job getting the information together and whatnot. You know, I've had a conversation with the Roanoke County administrator, and he was talking about some of the things their group's doing. Well, you guys are doing the same thing. It's organized in a little different manner, but you should be very proud of the work that you're doing and getting submitted, because it's being noticed.
I just want to say one thing to the lady from Craig County. I think this is appropriate, but I'm going to say it anyway. I happen to be a member of a Christian church, Disciples of Christ, and we have one of the nicest camps in Craig County. I cannot tell you how many times I drove down Route 42, made the turn, went through Johns Creek, went through everything to get my son to that old Craig, what is he called, Healing Springs, and yes, it's a beautiful, beautiful county, and I have enjoyed whatever time I've been through there. So I just wanted to say that to you, so you would know that I've been through it so many times. Thank you.
Ms. Biggs?
Okay, then I have another question too. Like, since we're looking sort of at doing a regional approach, that extends our federal representation as far as Congress people go. Okay, so now we'd be dealing with, I guess, 2 congressmen and our 2 senators. And something was mentioned about congressional hearings, but I think that they need to be aware of how the citizens were treated during the meeting at Eastern Montgomery, because it was very rude, and I think they at least need to be made aware of that. So maybe if we do this regional approach, I don't know if that's something that can come out of that, as far as keeping our federal people sort of in the loop about what we're trying to do, or comments about the representative that, I mean, I just thought was rude. You don't treat people like that.
But I want to tell you that some of our people treated him very rudely too. That's what made him do that.
Any other comments? Well, I'd like to thank you for coming from Craig. Thank Mr. Goodman, the county administrator from Craig, and I think it was a lady here from Roanoke County. But we thank all of you for coming out tonight, and we thank you for your support, and we support each other. We're going to support each other through this thing. Okay?
That's what we need.
So we are adjourned.
Great.
I'm clapping on that one.